You made it to level 2, deeper questions leading to deeper answers. I'm Tomas Garza, and I'm here to help you decide to transform. I'll be setting the pace for the process to support your unfolding. Learn and commit to a practice that brings simplicity and then awareness of what is ready to be released. Join me now and allow the experience of a deeper sense of love. Hello and welcome to Decide to Transform. I'm your host, Tomas Garza, and joining me today is my good friend and executive contributor, G.P. Walsh, master spiritual teacher with over 30 years of experience in many, many different techniques of spirituality and healing modalities. GP joins me every month here on Decide to Transform, and these are wonderful, in-depth conversations where really anything goes and there are no limits. So GP, it's a pleasure to have you back. Welcome.
Good to be back. Good to be back, Tomas. This is so cool.
It is. It's cool and it's fun. And you listening should know that GP and I have some very interesting conversations behind the scenes on this. And we have gone back and forth, and GP has sent me a number of different talks and lectures and materials out there that are of extraordinary depth. And I do mean extraordinary depth, insightful, thoughtful, deeply spiritual. And we have a number of these in store for you today. So we are always offering not one, but 2 shows a month, which are released on the 15th every month. So, well, GP, let's talk about none other than God on this show, shall we? And the rationale from my standpoint on this is, let's talk about the notion and the concept of God. And then as human beings, our relationship to this being, notion, concept. Yeah, let's talk about God.
All right. Well, let's kind of just dive right into the deep water.
Why not?
Because I mean, God is, ask any 1,000 people what God is, and you will get 1,000 answer. It doesn't matter how many people you ask. The idea that there's kind of this, in any religion or spiritual practice, there's this homogeneous, unified view of what their own teaching is, let alone what God is just, it's such a fallacious idea. It's been around for a long time. As whenever we got to the point where we could actually look out up into the sky, look around, and begin to fathom our place within this picture, and the fact we didn't know our place, that we were just aware of it. We're just aware of the way life worked. The horror of life eating life.
Yeah.
That this is how everything survives, including us. When somebody close to you dies, and you're having a conversation, and the next thing you know, there's just this lifeless thing there. Where did they go? I mean, there's a consciousness awakened in human beings that put us in a place where we started seeing things as they actually were, and of course began to wonder what our role in it was, and began to wonder where it came from. Was there a beginning? Was there an origin to it? And every culture on the planet for all time has had its origin story of where it emerged from, whatever. And it was always, they were mythological stories. These people, contrary to popular belief, these people did not believe there was some big being up in the sky that was doing stuff, right? They didn't know what it was. It was a grand mystery, but it was personified. So they would look around and they would see this great mystery in everything, right? In the way the plants grow, in the way the fox runs. They would just look around at nature and see this immanence in it. And in that's what really grew into the what you would have to consider the Eastern ideas about God, where God was immanence. God was in creation. God was one with creation, right? That everything was, in fact, God. Everywhere you look is God. As the Sufis say, wherever the eye lands, it sees the face of God. So it was like this invisible field or this invisible essence manifesting itself innumerable times. Uh, but the essence itself was ineffable. It was transcendent of all categories. It was neither male nor female. It was beyond even the idea of existence and non-existence. It simply could not be conceptualized because our minds can only deal in opposites, right? It can only deal in subject and object. Well, when culture emerged with, well, a couple of things. Culture emerged with agriculture, which is about 12,000 years ago. And with agriculture came the idea of ownership and property. Prior to that, people didn't own stuff. Matter of fact, agreed, somebody who wanted more than they needed, sorry, somebody who owned more than they needed, wanted more than they needed, was regarded as mentally ill, and they would be helped,
Mhm.
right, to get over their malady. I mean, now
Yeah.
it's celebrated, right? So, but when my livelihood depends upon the land I'm on, and I look around and there's different quality of land for growing crops and the like, all of
Yes.
a sudden there's a value that begins to happen, and the accumulation now of property uh, begins to have a meaning, right? It and status and all sorts of things begin to emerge that didn't exist prior to that. And when you get that, you end up getting specialization. You get a stratification of culture. People do special things. Now you have a merchant class, and you have a priest class, and you got a worker class. These things kind of developed, and then God became the enforcer of the cultural hierarchy, became this principle by which you were, this was the way it was supposed to be, that this was ordained from
Mm. Yes.
on high.
Hmm.
And so God is no longer immanent in creation. Now the stories start as creation having this moment, and there was this super being, and he made all this stuff come into play. And therefore religion is being in right relationship with that super being, not union with it, with not not oneness,
Yes.
right? But a relationship. And the Abrahamic religions are all like that. For the Jews, it's the law. For it's also the law for the Muslims. For the Christians, it's the law and relationship to Jesus Christ, as they define him to be. And for their money, he is God, right? And I won't get into all of that. Joseph Campbell put it beautifully. He said that God is the ultimate metaphor for the self,
Ah, yes.
just this
Mhm.
mystery of our own being. And so that's kind of the brief history, the brief history of God on Decide to Transform. And
Yes.
so, but you have completely different ways of life that emerge out of the Eastern tradition, which is immanence, which seeks
Yep.
union or oneness with God, and the Western tradition, which is relationship, which is all laws and ethics and enforcement. And in fact, Christ was regarded as a criminal because he claimed the Eastern view. I and my Father are one.
Yes. And well, we know what happened
Yes,
from
we
there.
do. We do indeed. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we do. We really have no idea.
Ah, okay, right. Yeah, yes. And well, so as the ultimate metaphor of the self, it's interesting the distinction between what has come to be the Eastern view and the Western view, one that's related to union and the other to laws. And the reason why I thought we would just launch right into the full depth of God is because In some of the material, actually, that from a talk by Chris Hedges
Mm.
that you introduced me to, by the way, that I was watching, yeah, he said something that's very, very interesting to me that I thought we could talk about here on the show, and that is God is a verb, not a noun. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it. Joseph Campbell makes the point that God was this transcendent immanence. It's really even beyond nouns and verbs, right? But we see God not as a thing, but as an activity, the activity of life and living, of growth, of development, of cycles. There's this livingness to everything we experience, right? Be it an ant or a tree or a human being. And so it's not like a static thing. And he made the point that in the Western religions, God became a fact,
Uh,
a,
yeah.
a
Mhm.
historic thing, right? Um, and and he points out that this the ideas that were around that are culturally based to give expression to this infinite mystery get concretized in the into the to the idea that this is what it is.
Mhm.
So the culture puts on the costume and doesn't take it off, thinks that this is what God is. So God becomes a noun, a thing, an
Mhm.
object, a knowable uh, uh, thing. And and so the essence of the whole religious experience gets completely lost in that. And you end up with war and conflict and all sorts of things because my view is the right view. This is the real, only true God, and yours isn't,
Mhm. Yeah.
which gives me permission to basically kill you and take all your property. How handy,
It's well, one would say it's convenient. Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
And I smote them with a great smite.
Yeah. Yes. Vindictive, jealous. Yes. All of those things. Well, so it's interesting that it's something that really stands out for me here is that it, God became a fact in human mind and in construct. So did this just happen over time?
Well, I think what happens is that the 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 natural tendency and urge for a culture to perpetuate itself tends to want to make its God a thing that is forever endorsing this culture rather than rather than an essence that can mutate, morph into anything
Mhm.
and take any shape whatsoever. You know, if I'm I and cultures just simply emerged out of our natural desire, our natural communal instinct, and our natural desire to survive, and they ended up stratifying and they kind of evolved into different forms. I mean, nobody creates culture. Nobody created God. The fact that there is God and gods in every culture is illustrative that there's something deep inside us, that's something archetypal in the human being,
Yeah.
that it's not an accident. And Joseph Campbell, I think he did one whole book demonstrating the mythological symbols that show up as dreams that he got from the work of Carl Jung.
Yeah. Mhm.
That they were made of the same stuff,
Yes.
um, and and so the cultures, though, they have a very practical duty, right? Not just their job isn't to just always be reaching for the stars. It's to make sure everything's fine and people are doing what they need to do and the culture survives. It
Mhm.
used to be the tribe, which was interrelated, and everybody had a function within it. It was close. It was more like a family. uh, so there was a sense of interdependence amongst those. As cultures got bigger and people didn't really know each other, the roles you played became increasingly enforced, right? And a lot of times you had no idea why you're even doing it. I mean,
Right.
if I'm a hunter gatherer, I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm
Yes.
playing my part so that I don't get, stabbed by the rhino, right? Right. I
Mhm.
got to be in the right place and make sure that my buddy doesn't either. And we're in the right place to actually, get dinner for the week. And so we're very clear, right? And we were
Yeah.
interrelated with nature. And so it was a clarity that we were one with nature, that we too were part of this incredible mystery. Um, and for some reason, we were just given the gift of being able to understand it. And to, to hunter gatherers in Africa, man was not numero uno. He was number four.
Yeah.
Number one was the elephant. Number two was the lion. Number three was the anaconda, and then came man. So they had a completely different view of us within the structure of nature, which is just extraordinary to ponder. But again, with the arrival of culture, culture took on the essential need for survival that used to just belong to an individual in a small group, and now the small enough that the survival of the individual and the group were interrelated. One did not dominate. But when cultures became larger and complex, the survival of the culture became more important than the survival of the individuals it was supposed to be serving. And that's why young men get conscripted and go off to war. And, that's why you could sell kids into slavery and all this kind of stuff. It was okay, right? Because the culture was surviving. And that attitude persists to this
Yes.
day.
Right. Yeah. And I think we can see that anywhere we look,
Yeah.
with people claiming that their building is superior to your building, our continent is superior
Yes.
to your continent.
And we're
That,
still sending, hundreds of thousands of kids off to die um, for our quote unquote national interests.
right. Safety and security of
Yes,
the group.
that's correct. It's actually safety and security of the elite.
Ah, yes, indeed. But of course, it's sold to us as
Oh,
our own
yes, absolutely.
personal
This is in the name of
safety
freedom and democracy.
and security. And for those listening internationally, GP, it's no mistake that GP and I are seated right now in the United States. So
No,
no
that's right.
mistake whatsoever. However, yes, here we all are. And wherever you are, this is so interesting because now we have this situation where the culture aims to preserve itself and makes of God, of the essence of being, whatever it wants it to
Yes,
be. So you have spent the majority of your life heavily involved in spirituality, in practice, and in spiritual teaching. So what would you say to people that have such a negative concept of God, or a fearful concept of God, that they back off of spirituality completely?
well, I certainly get it.
Hmm.
I've talked to atheists, and and they say, I don't believe in God, and I said, you know what, I don't believe in the God that you don't believe in too.
Yeah, right.
And let's face it, people have seen what it does. They've seen the world it creates, the kind of incredibly brutal behavior it justifies, um, and then and so this picture of this brutal, cruel psychopath, that is supposedly the supreme being. Of course, we're going to reject it. The cultural religions, uh, um, which are a reduction of religion, that where God is the enforcer of the rules of the culture, have done nothing but damage, kill, maim, rape, pillage for millennia, and all justified, uh, encouraged, all of this very warlike nature, Um, so anybody who sees that, looks at the consequences of it, um, may think that they're that way because of this particular God, but it's the other way around. They have that God because this is the basic uh, this is the basic greediness that gets enculturated when a culture or group, a ruling group in the culture, just has a lust for more and more and more
Mhm.
and more. That's what empires forever have been, going all the way back to the Egyptians. Empires build not to spread democracy, but to accumulate increasing wealth. And then they'll run and somebody beats them, and then somebody else is the empire. And this is it, going all the way, the prior to the U.S., which is now the empire that's trying to conquer the world. It was Britain. Um, there was the Persian Empire, the Franco Empire, before the Britain, right? So this has been going on for a long time, and they've all had their gods, right, that had justified that. And so you combine that insight into the kind of fruit it is actually born, with the superstition of it, right? The Spanish Inquisition, right? I mean, making Galileo recant, right? um, uh, all sorts of things. Da Vinci actually devised a different way of writing that only he could read, so nobody would read his notes to protect himself,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Um, and so the blossoming of science was such a shot in the arm for the intellectual development of human beings, because
Mhm.
now we had a way of substantiating something without that can go beyond just because I believe it. Now, science has its limits, which we're bumping into the ends of, because there's nothing in science that makes you ethical. Um, but you can see how people don't want to get stuck in something that is simply a belief. Why is it true? Because I believe it to be true, and it says so in this book. Well, how do you know this book is true? Well, because God said so, right? I mean, there's a cycle of willful ignorance there that isn't willing to check. I mean, the archaeological record, if you look at the history of the Bible, almost none of it actually happened. They're all stories. They were all stories, mythologies, some actual things, some events, some towns were real, and that sort of thing.
Sure.
But it was all strung together to make it look like it was a book, like it was this nice, neat little sequential. I mean, the first two chapters of Genesis were written 500 years apart.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, the Adam and Eve story, the second chapter is actually written 500 years before the first chapter.
Mm.
Completely different authors. They even have a different name for God in them, and yet people say, well, this is the creation, and then he made man, and how all that was. So the second chapter was all the sixth day, I guess. This is the way it's thought of.
Mm.
Um, so I don't even know where we started on that. So I went
No.
off.
Well, we just started with
Yeah,
the
that's right.
word
That's right. Why
God,
people
and
why
here we
people
go.
shy away from it? Yeah, because
Yeah.
we want something a little bit more substantial than
Hmm.
that. We want to exercise our intellectual capacity. We don't want to just believe something because of an authority. Now we have to be willing to apply that to everything, not just religion, right? To the medical establishment, to and the scientific, as well as political and economic, and all these things that purport to be, well, this is the best economic system ever in the world. This is the one that we're supposed to have. Well, yeah, really? We can't do better? No, we can't. And you can have that same kind of closed-minded bigotry that is really driven by self-interest. And of course, if I'm a priest in one of these religions, or I'm a billionaire, of course I'm going to be telling you that, yeah, this is the best system in the whole world. We're never going to change. God doesn't want us to change it. Right?
Hmm.
I'm sitting on top of it. Why would I want to change the rules?
Yeah. Yes. Well, and it's interesting that you mention a willingness on a person's part to if they want something more substantial, they're they've got to question literally everything.
Yes. In Buddhism, which isn't really a religion in its
Right.
essence, it has
Mm-hmm.
religious aspects to it. And obviously, the Theravada and the Tibetan and ethnic forms of Buddhism are religious practices and the like. But the essence of Buddhism is not a religion. Matter of fact, one of the tenets of Buddhism is called the Great Doubt. Doubt
Right.
everything. Doubt if the Buddha exists. Doubt all of it. Now, you can't ask a Christian to doubt if Christ existed, right? But if they did, they'd actually find out the reality of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we have to want to know the truth more than our comfortable, pretty lies, right?
Yes. And that, of course, stops so many people right there.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the culture holds out. If you're believing this, a bunch of people believe it. There's an illusion of safety, an illusion of belonging, and we all believe it. And of course, if we
Mm-hmm.
have enough heavy artillery, we can enforce it on others, so we can make them believe it too. Um, this is the thing about it. We want to believe something because we just don't like not knowing. It
Yeah.
makes us afraid. Now, that's to me is what's fascinating about Aboriginal cultures. You see, like the Native Americans and even the Hudsa Bushmen, which are still hunter gatherers, like
Right.
we were a million years ago.
Yeah.
Um, they don't have that kind of fear of the unknown. They actually embrace the mystery as part of it. And yeah, they have rituals. They're participating in it, but they're not. You have to understand, they're not trying to win the favor of a god. They're trying to harmonize with the way things are.
Mm-hmm.
It's more primitive of the Tao than it is of
Sure.
religious worship, right? I'm going to, God is demanding, the burnt offering,
Mm-hmm.
right? They didn't see it that way. They saw this mystery of nature, which is why they refer to it as the Native Americans refer to it as the Great Spirit. Just this presence that was imminent in everything, that was indescribable.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Indescribable. I mean, literally beyond all concepts,
Beyond all
words,
concepts.
everything.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Everything. And then would that be a way then to characterize spirituality as trying to harmonize with the way things are?
Spirituality is nothing but that.
Mm-hmm.
Spirituality is not adherence to rules. It's not a particular code of dress. It's not a code of ethics, although it's highly ethical. But its ethics grow out of an insight into the way things are. It is the search for truth. If it's not the search for truth, it's not spirituality. It's something else, whatever that might be. So it has to be a way of cutting through your assumptions and a willingness to cut through your assumptions, which means to face that fear of not knowing, to enter fully into the great doubt, right? With nothing to support you, you're out naked and it's cold and raining.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But that's what's required. If you're willing to do that, you have a chance of that door opening that reveals the whole secret right to you, not only to you but as you.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Would you say some more about that? Not to you, but as you.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
wonder of it, because we want to know the secret of the universe. We want to know the truth, and then we discover that's me,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, that's really what I've been looking for the whole time. I've been looking for the truth about me, the truth of me, the
Yes.
truth as me, right? It's like
Uh-huh.
a song going looking for music, right?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
You are the music, my friend. And I mean, the deepest spirituality is not a concept, it's not an idea. It's not a practice or a religion. It's not something that you go, oh, now I know. It's, oh, now I am. The essence of it is the I am.
Mhm.
That sense, to discover God is to simply find within yourself that place that simply knows its own existence, that sense of your own being. That's the I am. That's exactly what Moses found. God's I am that I am. Moses disappeared, and it was just his discovery through the burning bush, right? Which is a metaphor. The Hebrew word of burning means a mental turmoil. He was actually describing his own just inner turmoil about his life and his search. And he was on the mountain he was standing on, where he saw God, was called Mount Horeb, which is Hebrew for desolation.
Mhm.
I mean,
Oh,
his everything had fallen apart around him, and there was just this burning inside that wouldn't be quenched. And finally, it says, out of the midst of that burning, he hears a voice. It says, Moses, take off your shoes. You're standing on holy ground. That's the real burning bush. It wasn't some, incombustible shrubbery.
ah, all right.
It was a
Yes.
burning inside, that burning to know, that burning of disillusionment with the world and what it has to offer, the desire to know the truth that finally cut through all of that. And he saw deep into his own heart. And what he found at the center of his being was what we call God. And, and out of that for him, came the law, which he himself said he looked forward to the day when the law would be written on our hearts, which is the fulfillment of Christ in that, where it became not about the law, but about love.
Mhm.
And it's just marvelous when you understand the mythological significance uh, behind all of these things. But that's real spirituality, is that looking within and finding right at the center of you, closer than close. Intimate is too far away. It is you.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, you just don't know the truth. You are the truth. That is the consummation of spirituality. You just don't know about love. You are love itself.
Yeah. We, each of us, we are the answer we've been looking for.
We are indeed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. And there are, relative to the human population in general, so few people who are willing to ask these questions and sit in the great doubt.
Hmm.
So, in your life, in your experience, what has helped you to sit in the great doubt and stay there when you wanted to run?
My life falling apart.
Uh,
Believe me, it
yes,
was not this noble
I do.
pursuit on my part.
Mhm.
Suffering.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the purpose of suffering, is to
Mhm.
turn you inward. That's the only reason it exists. Um, Something has to quench our thirst for simple pleasure and for simple accomplishment and comfort. Not that there's anything wrong with those things. I'm not urging anybody to take a vow of poverty or celibacy or anything like that. I won't.
Me neither.
But to put it into context, that's all very well and good, but it isn't going to reveal to you who you are.
Right.
And all of those things will fail you at some point.
Mhm.
When I was riding high at times and it crashed and went, and but there was enough spiritual maturity that I recognized that I had just received the cosmic 2x4 once again, and to remind me that all of this is transient. And after a while you mature to the point that deep inner query, or that place you find, isn't disturbed by the ups and downs of life. So when it's great, it's good, this will pass. And when it's bad, that's okay, it too will pass. Everything is going to come and go. And what we're looking for is that which doesn't come and go.
Mhm.
that isn't just an experience, right? Just not, spirituality is not a peak experience. It's not a high. It's not perpetual bliss. It is total equanimity. It is the complete surrender to the inevitable. It is the being, the fully embracing being the ordinary human being. That's enlightenment.
Yeah. Yes. And of course, it's undertaken by so few people, yet here we are in a day and age where every spiritual tradition in the world is readily accessible to us. And you've been teaching for decades. So tell us a little bit about how you, for a listener that may not be familiar with your work, how do you go about it as a spiritual teacher?
Well, when you've been teaching long enough and are interested in how to teach as much as what to teach, that it's very, just because you know something doesn't mean you can teach it. That's a whole different set of skills
Yes.
that need to be cultivated.
Mhm.
um, some, like music, it comes more naturally for some than others, but
Sure.
one has to begin to learn. It's actually part of the spiritual process of the opening of the heart that makes you sensitive to others, sensitive to the various things that people are going through.
Yeah.
Your own suffering, it makes you acutely aware of the fact that suffering is the common denominator in humanity. And that just naturally opens a compassion within you, so so
Yeah.
that it matures to the point where nothing is offensive, and you can be with any kind of suffering even when there's nothing you can do about it, which is
Mhm.
which is often the case, and you just with it in compassion. Out of that, the more your own ego falls away and the more the heart is open and compassionate is there, the more access you have to the human heart, the more you can see the various levels of human understanding. And when you can, then this is the skillful means that Buddha refers to, the ability to speak to a particular level or state of mind in a way that they can understand it, and in a way that just kind of nudges them up towards that next level through metaphor, through humor, through cajoling, through all the different tools that are available to you in communication. Um, but it's always targeted directly at whoever you happen to be speaking at, because it doesn't do any good to teach calculus to a third grader. They're just not going to get it. You got to teach them arithmetic. You got to take them a step at the time. Um,
Yeah.
and that's on the teacher. It's up to the teacher to build the bridge, not the other way, not the
Right.
other way
Mhm.
around. And so I've just gotten sensitive uh, to where people are, so I
Mhm.
can hear the question behind the question. I can
Yes.
feel the energy. I can, you know, oftentimes they won't even know how to ask the question, and I'll get it anyway. Right?
Sure.
You can feel it. It's an energetic
Yeah.
thing. There's something communicates that is way beyond the words.
Mhm.
And you become increasingly sensitive to that. And if you know your subject well enough, and are versed in ways, all the different kinds of ways in which you can communicate, um, then you just find the right way to say it, and and the right in just the right energy and just the right time. Sometimes uh, I won't be spiritual with somebody at all. Right? They're suffering. The first thing I'll do is alleviate their suffering. If they're hungry, feed them first.
Sure.
That's a spiritual
Mhm.
lesson.
Right.
If they're brokenhearted, don't try to get them to transcend the broke. Be there in the broken heart with them.
Mm.
Be that comfort. Bring them there. Let them be with their grief long enough, and the natural process will fulfill itself. And then it's opening. They'll become open once again. So it's an art. It's really all I can say about it.
Yeah.
It's an art. And And there was a time when I didn't know that, and I would just kind of drive home what I thought was the right way. And lo and behold, it didn't work.
Um, sure.
And eventually you stop thinking, oh, they're so dense they don't get it. And you go, no, you're so arrogant, you're not teaching
Yeah.
it.
Hmm.
Oops.
Uh, yes, right. And, it's so interesting how multifaceted it really is. Because people on the outside looking in will look at someone like yourself who's teaching, and there's a comparative reality that sets in for people who might think, oh, well, it must be easy, right? Must be easy. This guy had it easy.
Oh yeah, I had it easy.
Yeah. Mm.
If I had had it easy, I wouldn't be doing this.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
have been doing something else, and I could have put this off for another 5 lifetimes. Who knows?
Oh, maybe more.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah,
more.
possibly.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah,
yeah,
no, we're all doing it for a reason. Now,
yeah.
what would you say to someone who is really, if you feel like they're really, maybe they feel like they're really ready to sit in the great doubt, they're ready to question everything. Where would you direct these folks? Because people have a hunger, a real burning desire for a practice with depth.
Yes, and thank God they do.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
the milk toast candy ass practices of the past, have really worn thin.
Mm.
I like to point
Hmm.
out that The Secret came out in 2006. Law of attraction is on everybody's lips, and the world is 10 times worse off than it was.
Sure.
So much for that. Um, where I have people start is most people these days, especially in the West, not as much in the East, where they have a different kind of heritage. Um, People in the West don't even know where in is. You say, you look within, they go, where's that?
Mm.
Pancreas? Over there by my lungs, by my spleen? They don't know. They don't have any criteria for the inward journey. So I start very, very simply. I mean, I actually just re-released the third edition of the audio program I have called Just Allow It,
Oh. Hmm.
in which I teach the
Yeah.
yoga of allowing. And it's my most popular course. People are still using it 10 years later. It's the first it's the first thing I ever produced.
No, right.
Yes, the first actual digital course I ever produced. Obviously, I taught live and stuff before, but this is the first time I did that. And so I start really with just simple body awareness, becoming aware of your own body, of your own breath, of the feeling of your body. And the more you do that, the more you become aware that the experience of your body, the sensations and the like, and your thoughts about it are not the same.
Yes.
And you can
Yeah.
begin to see how you've been living in the mind, interpreting events, and that interpretation isn't necessarily true. And that seeing is itself a very natural coming into the great doubt. But it comes in such a way that there's something very solid there. There's the experience of my body, there's the
Hmm.
experience of this presence, and all the sensations, all the things that are going on. And 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 a sensitivity begins to develop. And as the story dissipates, you find that your relationship with all your feelings and sensations and the like begins to shift. You begin to come out of resistance to them. I'm not supposed to feel this. I'm not supposed to feel that. And instead, you simply feel it. It loses its adversarial nature.
Sure.
And,
Hmm.
and you find yourself in the place very naturally that I call the place of the peacemaker.
Okay.
You're no longer trying to, okay, I want this and I'm going to get rid of that in order to get it. I got to get rid of these negative emotions. You find there aren't any negative emotions. They're just feelings running through you. And it completely shifts the relationship you have with your own inner world. When you do that, the doors start opening to go deeper and deeper within, because you're going past all the demons, all the dragons, all the stuff that you thought was so terrible. um the dragon turns into a puppy dog, the demon turns into your chef.
Excellent.
I mean, they get transformed, right?
Mhm.
uh, all by themselves, because they never were demons in the first place. They were angels in the basement. They were characterized in that way. And I go to great pains to explain how that all happened and the way the nervous system works and conditioning and all of that. But it starts with simply being able to give yourself permission to feel what you're feeling when you're feeling it.
Mhm.
And you begin to discover the inherent wisdom that can clearly begin to discriminate between what's true and what isn't. Because the great doubt doesn't leave you in great doubt.
Yeah.
It's the doorway to the understanding of true knowledge or wisdom.
Mhm. Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's very well put. It doesn't leave you in doubt.
No.
And I'm sure that there are people that are terrified that it will do just that, that it will
Yes.
create more doubt and more.
Yes.
Mhm.
Well, we just have to doubt everything that's dubious. We just have to doubt all the things that we believed were true, right? And the doubting ends in discovering what actually is true. And what is true doesn't depend on me believing it or not.
Yes, that. Yeah, excellent. Excellent point.
And that's where
Mhm.
doubt can end.
Mhm. Yeah.
But you find it's not head knowledge, it's living knowledge. It's I am that. I
Yes.
am that truth.
Yes. Yeah, I am. And this is very, very wonderful. So we've spent some time talking about nothing other than God and spirituality and the great doubt and how one goes about true spiritual practice. So, GP, this has been wonderful. And I always look forward to these conversations because I know we're going to talk about deep stuff, none of this candy ass stuff. Or as we put it last time, cappuccino spirituality.
Yes.
Yes, with 2 pumps of raspberry syrup and soy, please. Yeah, and for those listeners who did not catch the last couple of episodes of GP here, go back and give those a listen because we had some fun with that. We
We
had
did.
some fun with the metaphor of cappuccino, and we're also here to remind you that even if you're able to create and manifest beautiful things, God actually does not care if you drive a Mercedes or if you're going to work on your bike. It's all
No,
right. Either way, it's all right.
it's
All right.
all right.
Yes. Well, and to find out more then about the yoga of allowing, just allow it, your first digital course, then people would want to visit gpwalsh.com. It's a beautifully well organized, well laid out website with everything right there, all of GP's course offerings, and including some of your own musical compositions, meditations. That's gpwalsh.com. Well, GP, this has been such a pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Tomas. Great to be here yet again. Looking forward to
Yes.
next time.
Yes. Next time, GP will be here again twice a month here on Decide to Transform as executive contributor. So, everyone, thank you all for tuning in. We hope you got some depth out of this. We're going to bring more depth the next time. So, stay tuned. All right. Thank you for listening.